Returning to visit relatives in different provinces is a much-awaited occasion for many, seen as a special opportunity throughout the year. However, for Paula, this particular visit is an exceptionally memorable event, one she will never forget. It all happened 2 years ago when Paula had to work in Bangkok. During the New Year period, Paula usually made the journey to visit her father. He lived with his caretaker in the province of Sisaket. The district where Paula's father resided bordered on the frontier, and most people there spoke the local dialect, which is Sui. However, there was also a mixture of Central Thai spoken. On that day, Paula arrived at her father's house around 3 in the afternoon, coincidentally on the day of the local market. Seeing that it wasn't too late yet, Paula decided to take her grandchild to stroll around the market. Her father didn't say much, just cautioned Paula not to return too late because it gets dark quickly in their area, and people around there tend not to go out much after dark, especially because of the proximity to the border. After her father's warning, Paula and her grandchild got into the car and headed to the market. Upon arrival, they leisurely visited various stalls, buying snacks and knickknacks, enjoying themselves until nearly 5 o'clock in the evening. Paula's father called to remind her and her grandchild to return home. Paula acknowledged and said they would hurry back. But before leaving the market and heading to the parking lot, they encountered an elderly woman in her 70s who still appeared quite strong. The elderly lady approached Paula, holding a basket, and accidentally bumped into Paula's arm. She spoke in the Sui dialect, but since Paula didn't understand, she simply smiled before asking the lady in Thai if there was something she needed. Upon hearing Paula's question in Thai, the lady replied in the same language, asking if Paula could buy some of her remaining peanuts, as she had been selling them along with her granddaughter for a while without any customers. While speaking, one of her hands subtly stroked Paula's arm, and her facial expression seemed oddly fixated on Paula's arm, almost as if she admired it greatly. Ignoring Paula's response, the lady continued to focus on Paula's arm and commented on its good complexion, asking where Paula was from. Paula replied that she was from Bangkok and had come to visit her father since she had some free time. Despite Paula's answers, the lady seemed disinterested and kept insisting on Paula buying her peanuts, as if oblivious to the conversation. Finally, Paula agreed to buy 2 bags of peanuts from her. As the lady was packing the peanuts, she asked Paula where she lived. Sensing the awkwardness of the situation, Paula gently withdrew her arm and urged her grandchild to leave, saying they needed to go back home soon. After saying goodbye, Paula walked towards her car. The elderly lady continued to watch her until she got into the car and drove away. When Paula arrived home, she quickly attended to her personal chores, took a shower, and had dinner before it gradually grew late. Her father came in to ask Paula where she would sleep. After a moment's thought, Paula replied that sleeping on the first floor would be better, as the second floor was where her father and the caretaker slept. On the first floor, there were 2 rooms, one was empty, and the other belonged to her grandmother. Shortly after, her father and the caretaker arranged the sleeping arrangements in one of the rooms. Inside, there was a large bed with a mosquito net and a small ceiling fan. As Paula settled into bed, she played some music on her laptop, while her right hand was scrolling through her phone's screen. Before long, the lights in the house were switched off, leaving only the dim light from Paula's phone and laptop screen in her room. Due to the day's early travels, Paula soon drifted off to sleep. However, around midnight, Paula woke up feeling strangely uneasy, as if someone or something was watching her. She tried to sweep her gaze around the room and spotted something. Something was leaning towards her. As she strained to see more clearly, She realized it was a person's face, a terrifying old woman's face. Startled, Paula contemplated smashing her phone against the face, but she found herself unable to move. It felt like she was being sucked into the darkness, her body becoming numb. Then the face slowly moved closer to Paula's arm, lips puckering, and a tongue licking its lips as if it was about to lick Paula's skin. At that moment, Paula felt an intense coldness on her arm, like it was being touched by ice-cold water. But soon, the coldness turned into pain, a severe pain that reached her bones. With the pain, Paula summoned her last ounce of strength and let out a piercing scream, along with continuous cries. Her screams echoed so loudly that her father and the caretaker from upstairs were awakened, rushing down to her room. Her father knocked on the door and asking what was wrong, but he could only hear Paula's cries. He broke into the room and rushed to Paula's side. At that moment, her father came in, hugged her, and stroked her head, asking what was wrong. Paula tried to compose herself and told her father, "Dad, someone, I don't know who, just bit my arm and licked it." The caretaker quickly lifted Paula's arm to inspect, revealing real bite marks on her arm, wet and sticky saliva, and there were a lot of them. The caretaker then advised, "Wait here for a moment," before knocking on the door and calling for the grandmother to come and see. When the grandmother entered the room and saw the situation, she hurriedly grabbed a candle and began chanting in what seemed to be the Sioux language. Then, she instructed the caretaker to place the candle around the house, while she asked Paula's father to knock on the house's fence with a sacred sycamore ritual wand. After the grandmother completed the ritual, she handed Paula a talisman to keep. Then, she tied holy thread around Paula's neck, both arms and ankles, before giving her an amulet to wear. Afterwards, Paula's father and the caretaker took Paula upstairs to the second floor of the house. Her father tried to reassure Paula that there was likely nothing to worry about and advised her to rest as much as possible to regain her strength, as she might feel exhausted the next day. Meanwhile, the grandmother sat at the front of the family shrine, chanting prayers throughout the night. As time passed, Paula began to drift off to sleep due to fatigue. Paula woke up again in the morning to find her house filled with people. Both regular villagers, her relatives, and the village shamans had come to help take care of her at home. The grandmother came in to reassure Paula, saying, "Don't be afraid, dear. No one can harm you anymore. But don't leave the house just yet because I'm not sure if they're still around our area. Let's wait for the village shamans to finish their rituals first." The village shamans said they would perform a protective ritual, but it had to wait until noon. In the meantime, they instructed Paula to prepare eggs and other offerings to await their return. Before long, the relatives began to leave one by one. While Paula continued to wait at home with her caretaker, father, and grandmother, the caretaker suggested they prepare something to eat while waiting. About 15 minutes later, a motorcycle selling vegetables passed by their house. The caretaker went to check out the items to buy for cooking. As she was selecting what to purchase, the caretaker turned back to Paula, who was standing under the house's eaves, seemingly asking if she wanted anything. Suddenly, the caretaker who was standing collapsed onto the grass field, her face hitting the ground hard as if she had fainted. Everyone nearby was shocked and rushed to her aid. But then, the caretaker who had collapsed got up and turned to Paula, who was standing under the house's eaves. The demeanor of the caretaker changed. Her eyes hardened, her lips formed a sly smile, and she gazed directly at Paula. Then, suddenly, she sprinted towards Paula, attempting to reach her under the house's eaves. Paula stood frozen in shock, unsure of what to do. At that moment, another neighbor, a woman, rushed in and intervened, blocking the caretaker's path. Meanwhile, Paula's uncle and father quickly ran over to restrain the caretaker, preventing her from reaching Paula. As they held the caretaker back, she struggled and shouted insults at Paula in the local dialect language, which is Sui. Later on, Paula came to understand what the caretaker was saying. At that moment, the caretaker said, "I'll get inside you. I'll possess you. I'll use your face. I'll use your body. When I get inside you, I'll take your body to make love with men all around, and then I'll devour you slowly. And if your body can't find a man to make love with, I'll devour you to death in a single day." Then the caretaker looked towards the grandmother and said, You old witch, you've been cursing me since last night, thinking I wouldn't find out. But you must have forgotten something. Even if my spirit can't enter your house, I can possess another human body and come find Paula at your place," replied the caretaker defiantly. "As for you, Paula, remember this well. I've implanted myself in your mind. I've licked you, and your body belongs to me," said the caretaker with a menacing tone. At that moment, Paula's aunt, who lived nearby, hurriedly shouted to Paula, "Paula, come with me. Let's get in the car and leave right now. We need to get away from here." Once Paula regained her composure, she quickly ran to grab the car keys automatically and hurriedly drove off with her aunt. While driving, she continued to glance back, still concerned about the caretaker. Meanwhile, her father waved for her to go ahead. After a short while, her aunt led the way to a hotel in the province, which belonged to a relative of her aunt's sister-in-law. Her aunt instructed Paula to wait there for a while, as her daughter would come to keep her company. She advised Paula to stay calm and composed for now. If there were any concerns at home, her father would call. During this time, Paula remained puzzled by what had happened. She looked down at her arm. It was now bruised and purple, as if it had been severely beaten. Just touching it caused her intense pain. Several hours later, Paula's father called her. He told her that the village shamans had completed the ritual. He explained that the spirit that had possessed the caretaker's body had been there since last night but was driven away by the chanting. He mentioned that the reason for this haunting was because the malevolent spirit was attracted to people with a good appearance and beautiful skin, and when Paula allowed it to touch her body, it became even more pleased. Consequently, it followed Paula to possess her. Luckily, Paula's aura was strong at that time. However, if her aura had weakened, they didn't know what might have happened that night. Curious, Paula asked her father who the malevolent spirit was. Her father replied, years later, about 10 to 20 years, there would be urban legend of an old woman who liked to capture young women with beautiful faces and good skin. Before long, the women who were captured would exhibit symptoms similar to being possessed by a demon. This demon would then use the women's bodies to sleep with men all around, consuming the essence of the women from the inside until their bodies died. During that period, there were also 4 women who lost their lives under circumstances where answers couldn't be found, like this. This doesn't even include countless other incidents where women were sexually violated without being able to remember anything. Once everything was over, Paula's father told her to return to Bangkok that very day. He didn't dare let her stay here any longer because he was afraid that something bad might happen again.